YouTube, my name's Blair. I'm one part of the techno duo Boglin. I would have probably said the less talented half of that, but I also do produce music by myself under the pseudonym Audius. Anyway, first things first. This is my first YouTube tutorial, and all I wanted to do is quickly show you how to make some basic pad sounds using Thor in Reason, but this could really be applied to any polysonic synth that you have in any DAW. So let's get into it. Right. So within Thor, there's basically, you've got the option of having 3 different oscillators. So we'll start with one single oscillator here. And you can see that is turned on there. The number 1 is on, and that is routed through a low pass filter, which we want to be using. It's actually being sent to this filter envelope here is actually affecting the way that this low pass frequency knob is working. So I want to disengage that from there, so I'll turn that down to 0. But what I want to do with this is I want to actually affect that filter knob by using this amp envelope here. So this is the overall amp envelope for the sound, but I want that to affect not only the amplitude, I want it to affect this frequency knob here too. So I do that by going into this part of this soft synth, which is known as the modulation matrix. So in here, I'm going to click on this drop down menu for the source, and I want that to be the amp envelope that is here. And now I want to send that, the destination, I want to send that to this frequency knob. So that is filter number 1. And I want to select the frequency knob there. And initially I want to affect that 100%. Later on I'll probably play around with that. And it's also quite important to note that that is positive 100%. You can also affect that frequency knob by putting minus amounts, which it basically inverts the way that this amp envelope works. Excuse me. This is going to be quite a boring static sound at the moment. I mean, that's one oscillator that I've got going on there. Also, my amp envelope is not really how we would want that set for a pad sound, but I'll just play it anyway, just so that you can hear what that sounds like. Pretty boring, hey? Right, so what I need to do now is I need to change the attack time so that sound, the attack is a little bit slower. So I usually use a sort of medium attack. I want there to be a long decay, and also I want that sustain to be fairly long as well. Not quite at the top, but just a little bit from the top, and then a little bit of release on there as well. So sort of not quite medium release, but in between slow and medium release. So now you should hear, when I press a key, let's put the frequency down a little bit. What you should hear is that frequency knob for the filter opening as time goes on, and then staying open and then closing off as I release the key. So let's see what that sounds like. Cool, that's exactly what I was looking for. Right, what I'm going to do to make this a bit more of an interesting sound is I'm going to add another analog oscillator, and I'm going to slightly detune that by about 5 cents. I mean, you can detune it more, and you get more of like, you get a sort of a wider, you get more of a detune within the sound, basically. I can show you what that sounds like just quickly. So hang on, let's turn that oscillator on. gives that kind of phasing sound. And so by increasing the amount that is detuned by, you increase the phasing frequency. So I hope that's not too confusing. I'll just do that now anyway, quickly, just to show you. So that sounds like that. Let's detune it up to, I don't know, let's go 21. You can hear that. There's quite a big difference there. So yeah, I'm just going to leave that around about detuned by about 5 cents. And I'm maybe going to just pull this low pass filter down a little bit more. So really that's your pretty much your basic starting point of any sort of pad sound. So if you're playing chords, I mean, you can see what that sounds like. Let's just play C minor there, shall we? Okay, so sounding pretty cool. I mean, you could adjust the release so that that's a bit longer, and maybe make the attack a bit slower as well. So let's try that. Cool, sounding pretty good. Now, a cool thing that I learned the other day, well, obviously I knew about it, but I didn't realise what it really sounded like until I tried it. And that is putting that amp envelope affecting this frequency knob by a negative amount. So now what that is doing is that it's closing that low pass filter as time goes on instead of opening it up. So to have the most effect, what I really need to do is I need to set that frequency knob right open so that as the key is pressed, it will close it, and then as it's released, it'll open it back up again. And the reason that I say that I didn't really discover this until the other day, I was reading about it, and I thought, oh, I'll give that a shot. And then I suddenly realised that there's actually quite a lot of songs that use that effect in it. Now that I've pointed it out, maybe you'll be able to recognise some songs that have got pads that sound like that in it too. So let's try that. Let's try another C minor chord. Let's try that. Cool. Okay, so that's pretty exaggerated. With regards to opening and closing the filter, I mean, don't need to affect it by 100%. Maybe you could put it at sort of 70%, and that would sound like this. And now another thing with pads is that really they're used to sort of they really used in a way that sort of sits in the background and fills quite a lot of space. So it's actually really nice to have pads really wide. It depends what you're doing with them, but a way of widening that sound is by using chorus. So I'll use a little bit of chorus. I turn the chorus on there, and I'm just going to play the chord. And as I play the chord, I'm going to add chorus to it, and you'll be able to hear the difference, especially if you've got a pair of headphones on. So let's give that a shot quickly. So you can hear that's really like widened that right out. I'll play it again, and I'll quickly move the dry and wet knob, and you'll be able to hear what the difference between the two of them is. Okay, so that's with the chorus off, and that's with the chorus on. Wicked. So that's sounding pretty good now. Now I realised that pads are something that you probably use quite a lot in, really atmospheric music, ambient, just nice, long, sort of evolving sounds, and a way to stretch those sounds out a little bit further and make them blend into each other when you're playing different chords. nicely. So that there's not too much of a transition. Is just to put a bit of delay on it. So I'm just going to click the delay on here. I'm actually going to set that to 3/16 and put a little bit of feedback on, and I'll just turn that up. So basically, when I release the notes or release that chord, when I take my fingers off the keys, that's just going to give you like a little bit of a bit of echo, and just a bit more atmospheric. So I'll just give that a shot now. Cool. And so as far as basic pads go, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's lots of other things you can do. You could add other oscillators, and quite a common thing to do is add another oscillator that is affected by some sort of waveform that affects the frequency of it. And that gives you sort of like undulation over time, and it makes the sound really interesting, as does detuning those oscillators. So yeah, I'll just quickly do that, but I mean, you can literally go anywhere with this. So you can use all sorts of different types of oscillator, and you could affect the frequency with all sorts of different types of waveform. But I will quickly do that now. So I'm going to turn oscillator 3 on. I'm going to make oscillator 3 an analog oscillator. And I'm going to use LFO1, which is up here. Oh, clicked the wrong one there. Use LFO1. I'm going to affect it just a little bit to begin with, like 31%, and I'm going to send it to oscillator 3, which is this one here, and I'm going to affect the pitch. So yeah, I don't really want it to affect it too much. What I'll do is I'll turn the other two off so you can just hear what that's doing. I'm going to turn the rate right down, so it really slowly affects that pitch of that oscillator. So I'm just going to play a single note now. I'm just going to play C, and you'll be able to hear the pitch change. So when I turn on all of the other oscillators, I mean, the reason that I only use a small amount of affect that a small amount is so that it is really barely noticeable, that pitch change, but it adds it adds quite a lot of interest to the pad. So yeah, I'll turn the rest of the oscillators on, and you can hear them all together and see what that sounds like. I'm just going to play one note, and then I'll play a chord. So yeah, that's sounding pretty cool to me. I'll just play a chord now. Let's see what that sounds like. Cool. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to leave it there for the moment. There's lots of other things you can do with that. You could probably put a bit of reverb on it. And yeah, and then you're sort of getting into mixing and mastering, so I don't want to go too deep. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that tutorial. It's just basic stuff. I'm not professing to be any sort of expert at all, but I just want to help people get into making music and sound design, really. So yeah, I hope it helps. Yeah, if you like it, give it a like. Thank you. Cheers.